If there's anything that Apex is known for, it's probably movement. And normally when we think of movement, people tend to think of Fade doing a backflip 360 tap strafe wall bounce into a dolphin slide. But in reality, the most important movements in Apex are just the simple ones. You don't need to be on mouse and keyboard or be able to tap strafe or any of those things to be a good player. So today, I've got 5 critical but easy movement tips that everyone should be using if they want to improve at Apex. But if you want more in-depth guides on how to do all of those more advanced movement techniques, make sure to head over to the GameLeap website, where I personally have literally made hundreds of guides to help you become a better player. Guides covering fundamentals, advanced movement techniques, advanced legend tutorials, gameplay breakdowns, and so much more. So if you want to improve faster, I highly recommend you join the GameLeap family to get instant access to all these in-depth guides today. Now for our first movement tip, it's holstering. I'm gonna just keep it real with you, ladies and gentlemen. If you're not holstering every time that you're repositioning, you are doing it wrong. And no, I don't just mean when you're rotating from one point of interest to the next. I mean when you are under fire and need to get to this piece of cover before you die. Or if you need to push up on a player who is only about 15 meters away. That's 1-5, not 5-0, okay? I know it may not seem like much and not worth doing, but I promise you, in a game where the average time to kill is around 1 second, that 13% increase in movement speed can mean the difference between you getting the kill or being killed. So really try to make a habit of holstering your gun whenever you're repositioning, which actually leads me to my next tip, and that's learning how to quick slide. If you haven't realized yet, dead slides feel really bad. And this is basically when you go to slide but then get slowed by a bullet or don't sprint for long enough to actually slide. Well, likely you're just going to unexpectedly crouch, and we all know how that leads to us ending up at the QQ barbecue to rant about how terrible the game is. Well, at least that's the case if you're like me. But the reason that this happens is because when you sprint with a weapon out, you have to build up enough velocity in order to actually do the slide. From a standstill with your weapon out, it takes 3 full steps in order to do a full velocity slide. 3. This is where quick sliding comes into play, because when your weapon is holstered, it only takes 1 step to build up enough momentum for that full slide. But we can even take this a step further, because that single step takes roughly 150 milliseconds. However, you can actually take that down to 120 milliseconds if you start in a crouch. But honestly, that part isn't super necessary. Let's get into that advanced stuff. Really, all you need to remember is that holstering your weapon before you go into a slide will allow you to achieve a slide jump way faster. And this is 100% something you should be doing, because it's going to allow you more successful slide jumps in combat when you need it the most, such as when you quickly need to reposition around a corner or a piece of cover, or you're gonna die. Which brings us to our next movement tip, and that's using slide jumps for pushing and pulling. Slide jumps are the fastest way to move around the map, unless you're one of those Trident Charlies who be driving around Storm Point like it's Grand Theft Auto or something. Jokes aside, slide jumps are really strong, and the longer you're exposed, the more likely you are to die. I mean, it's kind of simple math there. That's why using slide jumps to move from one piece of cover to the next is so important, regardless if it's to push or to pull, because it allows you to significantly cut down the amount of time you are physically exposed. But the real reason slide jumps are so important is because they allow you to have more control over the fight. Let's say, for example, a player cracks you within 15 meters, but you slide jump to get into cover and maybe get a shield cell off. Well, 90% of the time, they will chase you at this point because you're cracked and they want that kill. But you already know this. So you are here waiting around the corner, and they end up running right into their death because you're already aiming down sight at their face. They expected you to be healing, but you expected them to push. So when they show up, they have to react to you aiming at them while you are already 1 step ahead. The more you have to react to a situation, the more mistakes you will make, and slide jumps combined with cover allows you to pull players into bad positions, therefore forcing them to react and make those mistakes. How do you think Asu and Fade always win those 1v3 fights? It ain't because they're going in guns blazing, I'll tell you that much. No, it's because they are using proactive repositioning to isolate players and lead them into bad positions for easy kills. And if you want to proactively reposition, I'll tell you now, simply running around with your gun out ain't gonna cut it. Do them slide jumps, baby. Now, something we definitely need to talk about is strafing. No, not tap strafing, the good old classic strafe. Let's be honest, people, while M&K pretty much is better than controller in 90% of ways, controller aim assist is really strong in close quarter fights, which tend to happen often in Apex. So if you don't know how to strafe, regardless of your input, you are going to get absolutely smashed and think they are cheating, when in reality, we just weren't actually strafing as much as we thought we were. So you need to learn how to add some variance to your strafing to break that aim assist. You can do this by adding crouches, which make sure you aren't spamming too fast, otherwise it won't actually do anything. Just complete each crouch animation, and that will help tremendously, I promise. And ensuring that your strafes aren't so linear. No No more left to right to left or just strafing to the left for an hour straight. No, you gotta start doing far more erratic strafes using ankle breaks. Doing something like strafe left for 3 meters, then go to the right for 0.5 to 1 meter, then immediately switch back to the left for another 3 meters, then crouching while moving inward and reversing the process. It's much harder to predict, it's easy to do, it adds plenty of spice to your gumbo, you feels me? Now for our next tip, and probably the most important one, is that if you can't tell by everything I've said in this video so far, there is a direct correlation between movement and positioning. For example, you can use movement to get to different positions faster or to get to a different piece of terrain that you would normally not be able to reach by conventional means. But the most important thing for you to remember is that movement generally makes up for bad positioning. Therefore, if you find that you are needing more and more movement in order to achieve better results, well, it's likely that there's an underlying issue of positioning, not necessarily it being your movement, unless you aren't doing the fundamentals that we've been discussing so far. And don't get me wrong, nobody is going to have 100% perfect positioning 24/7 and every second that you're playing. No, that's just not how it works. There's simply too much RNG to account for, considering that there's players, loot-based loadouts, and legend abilities involved. Now, it's more so about using decision-making more effectively rather than relying on a solid blueprint of this position will always work, because I'll tell you now, it won't. But see, when you position yourself poorly, such as constantly being in the open or just W keying into their face hole, that is when that advanced movement really can save your bum. So sure, you can become a master of the backflip 360 tap strafe wall bounce into a dolphin slide. It'll take you days to get the muscle memory down, and then it'll take you weeks and even months to actually implement it into real situations. Or, you know, you could have just used the box for cover instead of wide swinging into their hole in the first place. That's all I'm trying to say. My point is, before you start trying to learn all the crazy advanced movement that you literally have to be a psychopath to have the patience for, make sure your fundamentals are solid first, because you can be an insanely good player if you have really strong fundamentals. But if all you have is movement and no positioning skills or game sense or aim, you might as well just save some time and super glide on over to the QQ barbecue, you feel me? In the end, whether or not you decide to implement advanced movement is up to you. It can be a very good tool, especially if you are a more aggressive player, but it's not something that is 100% necessary for you to be successful. A great example of that is Shiv. His fundamentals in positioning, aim, and basic movement are so strong that he doesn't even need to consider advanced movement as an option. So if there's anything for you to really focus on, it's the fundamentals and how to apply them. So make sure that if you are going to focus on movement, the first things you focus on are your strafing and how you're pushing and pulling and using the quick slide. And most importantly, how you're holstering, because I'm telling you now, that is a game changer and it plays into all of the other different types of movement. So I cannot recommend you really making sure that this is an ingrained habit. This has been your Wiggly Boy Johnny. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.